Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Stephen Hairfield, and this is part two of the continuing series of Achieving Divine Consciousness or Divine Awakening. And I appreciate all the listeners and subscribers very much, along with the messages that most of you have contributed. I'm deeply honored and thank you. Today, I'd like to talk with you about something that I've always found very intriguing, and that's the idea of self-acceptance. That seems to be somewhat difficult for most of us to do. Yet it's part of the path, part of the journey, if you will, of achieving divine consciousness. After all, if you cannot accept you, how can one ever achieve any level of consciousness? It's really not all that possible. But what you can do is you can use the nuances of yourself as your teacher to help you achieve that divine consciousness. There's an ancient saying that originated out of the Far East, and it's in essence this, that when the student is ready, the teacher will come. That's actually a twofold message. The first part of that message is possibly somebody like me or the myriad of thousands of accomplished people out there that are attempting to get all of humankind to awaken to the true nature of their being. The second aspect of that statement is uh, when the person is ready, their own higher teacher, their own divine being becomes the teacher to them. In other words, we are our own best teacher after all. And it's difficult to accomplish that until we reach certain levels within ourselves. And self-acceptance is one of the largest hurdles that any individual can accomplish. You see, if you don't accept yourself, then in a sense, that means you're avoiding yourself. My question to you would be, how in the world can you actually do that? No one can avoid themselves. After all, the fourth principle of karma tells us this: wherever you go, there you are. Which means that you're the common thread in your entire life. In every single experience that you've ever had, you are there, you are present in it. And one of the things that no human can do is avoid any form of experience. I humorously share with people that life is blunt force trauma. Why? Because we are the epitome of experience, being human beings. And that's the nature of our lives. But what we do is we tend to hold on to those experiences, especially the negative ones, our pasts. And that historical information can hinder you, hamper you, or assist you in achieving the idea of self-acceptance. It's up to every individual to end up ultimately to accept themselves, and that's one of the primary goals or achievements of life that any individual can do. No matter what your life experience is, you are in it, and it defines you, so to speak, and even can confine you. Unless you tend to use it as your own personal teacher. Look, self-acceptance is as simple as this. Be who you are as opposed to who you are not. And when we're not walking the path of self-acceptance, we're simply being who we're not. Let me give you a simple example of something. Let us say that you really would like to meet a person, get to know them, go out with them or whatever, or they to you. And you spend a whole lot of time attempting to impress a person. When you are attempting to impress a person or a person is attempting to impress you, guess what? You're not being who you are. Let's say also that you act one way around loved ones, one way around friends, another way around people that you work with, and another way around your family. Who are you in all of that? Is all of that not an illusion? Is all of that not put on? Why can we all not act the same no matter where we find ourselves? And the only way that you can even accomplish that idea is through self-acceptance. The idea of self-acceptance is so significant and so important in our lives that it helps us become who we really are. And when I say who we really are, that's from inside you, not outside you. Everything outside you defines the what you are, but it certainly has nothing to do with who you are. Never has been, never will be. In fact, you can use the what you are as a wonderful teacher to teach you about who you are. The path of self-acceptance is just simply accepting that person inside your external trappings called the body. Let us say that you wanted to be taller, shorter, thinner. You wanted different colored eyes. You wanted different color hair. Well, the hair can be resolved and the different shape of your body can be resolved. But there's certain things within you that sooner or later is about you accepting those very things. If you don't have blue eyes, who really cares? You know, most of us live our lives in regards to what other people think us to be. And we live what other people tell us what they think we are. When how do they know? All they see is the external. They cannot see the internal. Only you can do that. Which is why, how in the world can any individual truly avoid themselves? That's probably one of the most interesting things to me about humans and in life. I work as an intuitive life coach with people literally from all over the world. And my focus is always on self-realization. The only way that anyone can accomplish self-realization is down the path of self-acceptance. That's how one individual can become self-realized, and there's no other alternative to accomplishing that. We are here in this world, in this life, so that we can learn to appreciate who we are. Let me share some information with you if I can. A couple of things. We're all divinely perfect, and we don't realize that. How can I say that? Well, let me give you a couple of ideas that were semi-presented to you last week, and this week I'm going to simply attempt to expand them. Here's one. I believe that Christ said this in the book of Luke. What he said was, is you look here and you look there for the kingdom of heaven, yet you do not look within you. Well, theoretically, this thing that we call God, the divine creator, is in heaven. So if the Christ is correct, and I'm certainly going to follow what he suggests versus what any organization would suggest to me. So if heaven is within you and God is in heaven, where does that place the idea of God? Does that not place God within you? The other thing to consider is we originated out of divine consciousness, out of divine cause, out of divine energy, and it created what we now term the human being. Well, if we originated out of divine substance, does that also not make us divine? If so, how can divine not be an entity that accepts itself? See, we just don't consider things in that fashion. See, the part of the path of self-acceptance revolves around the idea of a simple word, perfection. Now, understand something. You're all perfect and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, I'm not saying that in the sense of arrogance by any stretch of the imagination. You see, if we originated out of that divine substance, that divine idea, and that divine idea and that divine substance is contained within us, we just don't see it. You see, in the idea of perfection, we can look at that from two directions. One direction, we can look at it from the ego. I can promise you something. If you see perfection from your ego, it's going to make you extremely arrogant. And we see that everywhere anyway. But if you realize your own divine perfection in the truest sense of the word from the divine side of your being, it is truly a humbling experience. Now you've got the truth of the idea. So don't allow the ego to convince you of that. Just realize it on your own. And the only way you're going to do that is the first step, which is self-acceptance. After all, if you don't accept yourself, you're either avoiding you or you're denying you. And what's that going to get you? Nothing. It'll simply hold you back. It'll cause disease or illness, or ill at ease, any way that you'd like to look at it. See, when we see ourselves in divine perfection, that makes every single cell in our body vibrate in the realm of perfection. So when I say to you that you're perfect and there's nothing you can do about it, I'm extremely sincere in the idea because it is simply the truth. Besides, you want to know something that's more arrogant than anything? Is telling the creator that it made a mistake in your creation. It made a flaw in you, that you are flawed. To me, that's more arrogant than accepting yourself as living in a state of perfection. You see, when you achieve that state, it's not that you're perfect and no one else is. That's ego, and that's arrogant as well. But when you step into that divine perfection state of being contained within yourself, now you see everything and everyone is divinely perfect. Don't spend your life attempting to fit into everybody else's thought, everybody else's ways, and everybody else's mannerisms. Look, we all would like to find a way to fit in, but I want to share something with you. That's not really possible. Why? Simply take a look at your fingerprint. How many fingerprints do you think are like that in the entire universe? None. That's the only one. So you are unique. You are unique in your experience and your expression, which means you cannot be like everyone else. So my message to you is don't attempt to do that. So you see, the journey of self-acceptance leads us into another arena, and that's the idea of self-love. Here's an interesting thing to consider. If you cannot accept yourself, how do you think other people can accept you? They can only accept you through their determination of you. And if you go that route, you're not being simply who you are. You're being who someone wants you to be. The idea of self-love. If you do not love you, how in the world can someone else love you? More importantly, how can you really love them? So you see, in the ancient texts, it tell us that what begins with us ends with us, and they're extremely sincere when they share that with us to fully understand. So you see, now we come right back to the idea of self-acceptance. If you don't accept you, no one else is, and the odds are you will have a difficult time in accepting other people. Why? Because what begins with us ends with us. So the first step, always, to realize your own divine consciousness stems through the idea of self-acceptance, self-love, and the idea of perfection. All three of those attributes are always ever present, but we do not necessarily see them. How can we see something when we're always picking it apart? When a person looks for perfection, I can make you a promise, they won't find it. And the reason being is for them to find perfection, they find a thing that has no flaws. So what are they doing? They're always looking at flaws. And because of that, they will never find perfection. Stop looking for flaws. Learn self-acceptance because there's no flaw in self-acceptance. Only in the personal view that you've been conditioned to believe. We've all been conditioned to believe that we cannot be like Christ himself or the Buddha. But ironically and interestingly enough, they both said that we could. So the question is how? How about self-acceptance, self-love, and the realization of divine perfections? You know, if you're always picking yourself apart, learn to use those things as your very teacher inside. Why do you do it? Why does anyone do it? You know, there's an interesting idea out there too, and it says that there's no such thing as a coincidence, nor is there any such thing as an accident. If that's true, then you cannot make a mistake, because you tell me where mistake or failure fits in that idea. It simply cannot. So stop looking at mistakes. Stop looking at perceived failures or even perceived flaws. That's just saying you're not agreeing with simply who you are. Now, how can you not agree with who you are? That's a huge question to grapple, and it helps you down that path of self-acceptance. I remember when I was a monk many years ago, one of my teachers came to me and he said, "Stephen, do you love you?" And I said, "No, I do not." He handed me a small mirror and said, "Look in this mirror and tell yourself you love yourself. Do that for the next month." I came back to him a month later and in tears, I looked at him and said, "Master, I can't do it. I'm not able to do it." And he said, "Tell me your experience." I did. I told him everything that every time I said that, everything my mind told me. And he looked at me and smiled pleasantly and he said, "Good. Now you know two things. One, you know your path, and two, you know the sound of your ego." What he meant by path was taking each one of those things individually and one at a time, work through them within myself until I understood the origination of where they came from, to understand that it was just a teacher to help me improve my own personal dynamics. And I made that journey. I decided to walk that journey to learn to appreciate myself just simply for being Stephen. And when you can do that, life becomes extremely synchronistic and flows. So remember, self-acceptance, self-love, and divine perfection and your realization. Thank you for viewing this. I hope you work with it. And if you ever get any questions, you can contact me at stephen@hairfield.com. That's my email address. And if you need personal guidance, I'll attempt to do everything I can. Visit my website at www.hairfield.com. Thank you. Shanti Satyam.